There are, as we said, a variety of ways to do research and to organize or analyze the data. If we're looking at quantitative, we can use a spreadsheet and so forth. Sometimes imagining a way to create a picture of the information can lead us to some valuable insights. Well, Chris Maynard, I've been told, is a master at doing this with spreadsheets. So he's going to take some time now and show us one way to use Excel spreadsheets to produce a scatter chart, which hopefully brings information together, not scattering it out. Chris?
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Dan. Just organizing my desktop so I can still see some people. Good. Okay. Right, you can pray for me now because I'm doing something I've not done before. I'm used to sharing PowerPoint slides, but I'm going to attempt to demonstrate some things live in Excel. So let's hope this works. Lord, I pray that this will be a useful session, whatever the technical challenges or however much I fluff this. Okay. So I wrote an article in Mission Frontiers. I see it's quite a long time ago now, 2022. And this presentation, this explanation is really unpacking what was behind that. So I'm in this article, I majored on this particular chart and spent quite a long time unpacking it. So I'm going to attempt to recreate this chart in front of your eyes. And I won't get all the way there, but we'll get most of the way there, hopefully. So you should be seeing an Excel sheet now, but this is the first sheet with my notes on. This is about the size of font in the middle here that I'll be using. You probably have a bar in the middle of your Zoom screen if you're on a computer, and you should find that you can move that bar from side to side and get more or less size on the screen here, but I hope you'll be able to read what you can see. Ages ago, I gave a talk on meditating on data, emphasizing the need to find what the important questions are about the data, interacting in order to get those questions with leaders, with understanding your own passion, God's passion, with the Bible, and with the data. So this talk is majoring on interacting with the data. Now, if you don't know Excel at all, you probably won't follow everything here, but I think you'll find that it'll be useful to you to know what Excel is capable of. And also, I'll be giving quite a bit of explanation as we go about the use of data. I think you'll find it useful that you can ask your friends who do know about Excel to do things for you in the future. So a scatter chart, that's what I call it. There is another term, a bivariate chart, but I can never say that properly. So I stick with scatter chart, and that seems to be what Excel calls it, or scatter plot or scatter diagram or whatever. You may have seen a secular example. There's a thing called the Gartner Magic Quadrant. And if I can get the right bit on my screen, here's an example that you might have seen at the close of your Zoom meeting a few times a year or two ago. The Zoom would put this one up because it puts Zoom in the top corner here. But Gartner used these two dimensions, the ability to execute and the completeness of vision, to show where certain bits of software are in things. So showing here Microsoft, Cisco, and Zoom being leaders, but Google being a good challenger. And I'll be using the same, I'm using the same sort of technique on a slightly different problem, slightly different scale here. So I use scatter charts an awful lot, but you don't see it much. I don't usually publish them. I wasn't really intending to publish that one in the article, but I was persuaded by some of my colleagues that there were important things to say about the way that we can use people group data. I don't usually publish them because they're more of a way for me of meditating on the data, trying to understand the data, and they need some serious explanation if you're going to publish them. And indeed, you could read that article as one long explanation about that one chart. But the problem was we wanted to engage with Africa about people group lists. I was working with a group of global people group list people, and for certain reasons I won't go into, we decided we wanted to engage with Africa. But Africa's a big place, and we couldn't just engage with the whole of Africa. So it's a lot easier to engage with a nation. And of course, we could decide by what existing relationships we had, who we knew where. But I was wondering, and nobody asked me to do this as far as I remember. It's often the way with what I do. Nobody really asks me to do it. I just start thinking. And I wondered, are there better or worse places to get involved to understand people group lists in Africa and promote and work with people in Africa? So I thought I'd create a chart, and most of my scatter charts, because of the work that I'm involved in, what God's led me to do, I'm plotting, the two things I'm plotting against each other are things from Jesus's statement that the harvest is plentiful and the workers are few. Pray, therefore, to the Lord of the harvest to send out workers into his harvest field. And I find this, when thinking about strategy, quite an important thing. So if we go back to this, you'll notice here I've got the harvest is plentiful, more plentiful going to the right, and the workers are fewer going to the top. So Somalia doesn't have many workers. Nigeria still has a plentiful harvest to be reaped. And where are we? Réunion, the harvest isn't very plentiful. Mayotte, the workers are few, but it's a very small place, so we can't call the harvest very plentiful. Now, I use different indicators to help me plot these charts at different times. Sometimes I will use population, the total population, to indicate the harvest is plentiful, or the total of non-Christians. And sometimes I'll use the total of Christians here, up this side, reducing as we go to show the workers are few. It depends what I'm working on, but with this activity, we were specifically looking at unreached people groups. And so I used the population of unreached peoples here, and I wanted to use evangelical Christians here at this point, by which I mean the Operation World Joshua Project definition, which includes most, it includes pretty well all Pentecostals, and it about half of the Anglicans worldwide, and a few Roman Catholics and Orthodox.
Chris, let me just step in here as you requested. You've used about half of your time. You wanted a time reminder.
Indeed, goodness me.
There you go.
I better move quickly, in which case, if you miss things, you better watch the video. Okay, so here I've got data downloaded from Joshua project. So if I go down the bottom using command down arrow, I've got 17,000 rows. Okay, loads of data. So I'm using a pivot table, which I won't even try to explain, to aggregate some of that. So here we've got aggregated together, we've got a country with the different Joshua project scales. I wasn't sure which I was going to take at this point, 1 being the least reached and 5 being the most reached. The number of peoples there, the sum of that population and the sum of the evangelicals in that population. And then because I put the region code here, it was fairly easy to go by hand and select all the African countries. So that's the same information with the African countries. And then I did another pivot to this time sort out the different, these are the Joshua project reach scales. So these two columns are working on the least reached. And I'll keep going because this is the boring bit. And separately, I aggregated the total evangelical population for each of the countries here. By this time, we've only got 63 rows, 60 rows or so for each of the countries in Africa, so things are getting easier. I then cut and pasted them by hand. So I've got now the sum, it says sum of population, but this is of the least reached. And I've got this total population of evangelicals in those countries. So 1 row for 1 country. And then because I've got here, as you might see up here, that I'm dividing evangelicals by the population. So this is 1 evangelical person per million unreached people. So it's just a proportion. I could have done it per billion or per 1,000 or per 1 or whatever. But anyway, I put another column in here, but I'll explain that later if we get that far with Dan. So then what we do is a little miracle of Excel engineering here. If I select those 2 columns and say insert at the top, going to the insert, and here we have a little picture of a scatter chart. So it's easy, I'll select the simplest one, and here we have it. Oh dear, it's not very friendly there, is it? That's because I've chosen to compare some very small things with some very large things. And so I'm going to take advantage of formatting this axis, the y-axis, and changing it to a logarithmic scale. And it seems as though I won't have time to explain a logarithmic scale, but it can come in the questions afterwards if necessary. And I'm changing the other axis to a logarithmic scale. And that sorts things out pretty well. And so we now have a genuine scatter plot instead of a lumpy plot. I personally, some people like things to go up when they go up, but Jesus said, and the workers are few, so I always like to reverse that one so that the workers being few are at the top. So there's a box here says values in reverse order that I'm clicking, and suddenly it works like that. And now you'll see that it begins to resemble the image that I have on here, although we've got a lot more. I might try and chop it out. How am I doing, Dan? Oh, Dan's talking, but we're not hearing what he's saying. Anyway,
5 or 6 minutes.
Let
5
me
or 6
carry
minutes.
on. Let me carry on. It's not very helpful having these dots. Now, here is a thing where Excel is idiosyncratic and it does strange. It needs a bit of good fortune to get this working, or you ask me about it. So I've clicked once on one dot. So that means I've selected the whole series, and I'm going to add data labels to this series of data. And look, it's terrible, because by default, it just tells you what you've got already on this scale at the side. So 3 just tells you that it's up here. So you have to do this really rather strange thing. Now I'm going to click not on a dot, but on the label. So when I right click, I'm formatting the data labels. And this is a trick. So it says now the label contains the Y value, and it's showing leader lines, which we won't worry about for now. What we really want is to get some values from cells in Excel. So we're going to tick on that. And then when we go, if I remember what we do here, we're going to go to our data here. And we're going to select very carefully, starting at the top and going to the bottom. We can do that. We're going to select that data range, confirm it by clicking on this icon here, confirm it again. And now we've got the name of the country, but we've still got the Y value. So we'll click on the Y value here to get rid of that. And things are looking quite sensible. We can begin to meditate on this, but it's also getting very difficult to read. So at this stage, I will right click on this. Yeah, come on, please help me. No, it's not going to do that for me. Okay, I was going to move it somewhere else. Let's try just making it bigger where we are here. Okay, I just dragged the corner of the chart to make it bigger. And I'm now, when you get, because of time, I'm not going to do everything here, but when you get a real mess of names here, what we can do is sort those out by hand. If you click on, I've clicked on a name, so I've selected the whole name series, every data label. But if you click on a name again, like Rwanda here, now I've just selected Rwanda, and I can either drag it with my cursor. In fact, I seem to be only it. So I drag it with my cursor out, and it gives you a little, what it calls a leader line here. And so I can begin to click on these different ones and drag them out so we can see more clearly what goes where. Angola, let's drag that out down here. So you can spend time arranging these nicely, as I did. Once again, if I go here, many of them didn't need arranging once I'd spread it out this amount, but some of them did. You'll see I've moved them where the leader lines will show. Now, you'll also see that I've added some colors in here. I did this in this instance to highlight the countries that are more to the north of Africa, the countries that are more in the middle, and the countries that are more to the south. As far as I know, I put these in by hand. I can't remember exactly, but we've got now one data series which covers everything. If you want to add color or some other distinguishing factor like that, then what I would do here, I will only explain it, I won't do it, would be to create one data series from here for the middle ones, one data series, separate data series for the north, and a separate one for the south. I won't attempt to do it now, partly because this didn't work when I rehearsed it. And I think Zoom puts even more strain on my computer. So I won't try that. But you can see the result, at least here, which then gives you another bit of a meditation. So these northern countries, I've got orange, and you see they're mostly at the top, which quite validates this African theme of go north. But there are some exceptions. Mayotte is a southern country, small southern country. The Comoros, similar, not far away from Mayotte. And Guinea, a more central country, is coming up here. The blue ones are central and the green ones are southern. You could do all sorts of interesting things here. I might have chosen to color them by language. That would have been an interesting point. And then, again, probably not getting the time to tell you, but in this article, I've got an explanation of lots of different things that this sort of chart can tell you. More reason to go somewhere, more reason to stay and evangelize where you are. The Jesus statement, lift up your eyes to the harvest, the field is white. I always think of that when I do a chart like this. And finally, we actually settled on a subset area, a strange area of the chart as one's worth engaging about people groups, because here there was a relatively good harvest, relatively good worker ratio, and also relatively good church size. So it wasn't necessarily in this case we wanted to go to the top or to one of the corners of the chart, which is often the way you get drawn to one of the corners of the chart, like they do with the Gartner Magic Quadrant. But in this case, you can see a group with certain characteristics. So Dan, I'll
Right.
stop there and
Very good.